Hi. How's everybody doing? Good? Come on. You woke up on a Saturday morning, you came down here to the franchise show to learn about how to franchise your business. How many people here own a business right now that they're thinking about franchising? Okay, good. And how many people are just here to learn and find out and see a little bit more about what it's all about? Show of hands. Okay, good stuff. My name's Shawn Saraga. And I own two companies, the Franchise Academy, which is a mini private equity firm that takes equity in a number of different franchise systems and then applies a hyper growth model to help those franchisors grow exponentially. I also own the Mr. Franchise Company, which is a public speaking company. I do motivational speaking. I talk across the country at different franchisor conventions and things like that. A little bit about me. Sorry, I'm trying to see. This is not clicking for some reason. Hang on. A little bit about me. So I've been in the industry for about 19 years this May. I've opened up about 950 franchises over my career and signed just as many leases. Some of my most recent claims to fame were probably managing Burger King for 5 years before it was taken back by Redberry and converted corporately. I took Bar Burrito restaurants from 80 locations to 260, and that company recently exited for $70 million. I took Freshie to just under 400 locations, and that company recently exited for $50 million. I've been in the industry for a number of years. I've done a lot of work, and I've worked with a lot of different brands. Now, what I'm not is a consultant. I'm not a consultant, so please don't confuse me with a consultant. I do provide coaching services, but I'm not a consultant. And my best example of a consultant is this. A shepherd is minding his flock in a field, when all of a sudden a silver BMW rips onto the field. A man gets out of the BMW and says to the shepherd, "Excuse me, if I can tell you how many sheep you have in your field, can I take one?" The man looks at the person, obviously thinks he's a yuppie, and says, "Give your best shot." He says, "Give it your best shot." So the man takes out a laptop, plugs it into his Rogers cell phone, logs onto a NASA satellite page, takes an aerial shot of the neighborhood, uploads it to Photoshop, converts everything into dots, and puts it into an Excel spreadsheet and says to him, "You have exactly 1,356 sheep in your field." Shepherd said, "That's amazing," and looks on amused as the man takes one of the animals and puts it in the boot of the car and says, "Hang on, if I can tell you what your business is, can I have my animal back?" The man, thinking he's too clever, says, "Give it your best shot." Shepherd says, "You're a consultant." The man looks amazed and says, "How did you know?" He says, "Well, you showed up here, though no one asked you to come. You expect to be paid for a question I didn't ask, and you gave me an answer I already know. You know nothing about my business, now give me back my dog." I share this with you just because there are a lot of consultants in this industry, and there are a lot of people that are going to give you advice on your journey as you start looking at different opportunities. Be mindful of the advice that you're getting and who it's coming from. Yogi Berra said, "When you come to the fork in the road, take it." You've all come to a virtual fork in the road. Whether you're going to franchise your business, whether you're not going to franchise your business. Whether you're thinking about investing in a franchise, what you're thinking about doing with your money, you're at that fork in the road, and you're going to take it one way or the other. And believe me, indecision is still a decision. Sorry, it's frustrating that I can't use the clicker. If you currently own your own business, and you've built it up and it's successful, and you feel that you're at the point where you're ready to franchise, then you probably adopt this philosophy, which is my philosophy, and that is an excuse limit of 0. As a person getting into franchising, if you're going to be a franchisor, you really have to focus on an excuse limit of 0. You got to take the excuses out of the equation. There is no room left for excuses. Franchisors have replicable, proven business models. Given the same relative set of circumstances, a business should be able to experience the same relative set of success over and over and over again. There is no excuse. You're taking out all of the excuses so that you've got a proven pattern of success for people to follow. Any one person can win a game, but it takes a team to win a championship. When you're building your team, you are putting together the people on that team that are going to take you to the next level. I recently went through the practice of trying to hire another assistant, and I interviewed quite a few people. And I know a lot of people like to talk about the remote workplace and working from home these days, and that seems to be really good for work-life balance. But what I build for myself and for my companies are championship teams. We achieve unbelievable things. We achieve phenomenal growth at a rate and level nobody else does. And when I was interviewing people, I was interviewing one person. She was a competitive athlete, and I thought she would have been a great fit. I gave her the offer, and she calls me back the next day and says, I want to be able to work remote to do this job. And I said, well, you're a competitive athlete. You've been on a championship team before. Could you have been on a championship team if you were practicing at home alone and only came together with the team on Fridays to win the game? It doesn't make sense. Championship teams work together, they play together, they come together. But it takes a team to build a championship. And that's how we achieve growth, and that's how we do it in what I like to think is the greatest country on earth, and that is Canada. If you're investing in a franchise, you're building a copy-paste system, right? You're taking a proven, replicable business model, you're repeating it over and over again. It is literally copy-paste. And we're going to talk about all the different circumstances that are involved in building up that copy-paste to create the opportunity. And as franchisors, if you're looking to be invested as a franchisor, you're actually getting into a new form of marriage. Because your franchisees look at you like it's a husband-wife relationship. It is very synergistic. You're relying on each other. It is a form of marriage. It comes with a contract, just like a marriage does, that Victor's going to put together for you with a prenuptial agreement that says all of the things that are going to happen if you guys split up. But it is a marriage. You are in a synergistic relationship. The franchisee doesn't exist without you. You don't exist without the franchisee. That is how that rising tide raises all ships. So how do you franchise your business? Well, first you have to have a proven, replicable business model. What does that mean? It means strong validation. So if your business has good financials, can show that it can grow and sustain itself, afford to pay a royalty, and take on those types of challenges, then you might have a proven, replicable business model that has good validation in place. And validation is incredibly important. When that first franchisee is thinking about investing in you and your business, they're going to want to know, how are you doing it? How are you making money? Is there enough money here to be made? Can I afford to pay that royalty? You're taking on a very big responsibility when you become a franchisor. People are investing their entire life savings in you and what you've built and what's made you successful. Validation matters, and it's incredibly important. The quality of your questions is also going to determine the quality of the answers that you're going to be asking people when you're interviewing prospective franchisees. Remember, this is a marriage. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And one thing I really want you to wrap your head around is this. If you're a successful franchisor and you have a successful business with good unit economics, you are not selling franchises. You are granting them. You are giving someone else the opportunity to run your business with your license, your likeness, all of that. It is a grant. It is not a sale. When you sell someone something, they feel like they own it. They feel like they can change it. You sell someone a car, they can change the color. They can modify the interior. You can't do that with a franchise. Another one is, make sure your definition of success matches the franchisee's definition of success. People have different definitions of success at different times in their lives. When you're 4 years old, success is not peeing in your pants. When you're 12 years old, success is having friends. When you're 16, success is having your driver's license. When you're 21, success is having sex. When you're 30, success is having money. When you're 50, success is having lots of money. And when you're 65, success is having sex. When you're 70, success is having friends. And when you're 80, success is not peeing in your pants. Make sure your definition of success matches with your franchisee's definition of success. If you're in the restaurant business and someone comes to you and they're about to have, and I get this at least 2 or 3 times at every franchise show, some new dad Some guy that's about to have a kid in 3 to 6 months comes up to me and says, I want to buy a restaurant. My wife's about to have a kid and I want to buy a restaurant. And I'm like, okay, so you don't want to see your kid for the next 5 years. You know, make sure that your definition of success is aligned with the people that you're talking to. And can you train people to do the little things that make the big difference? So many people take for granted the little things that make the big difference in building your business. The little things that you do every day that you don't even realize you do. The little things that are just part of your personality. Look out for those things, because those are going to make a big difference. And are you ready to lead people and have them invest their life savings in your model and making the best choices that lead them in that direction? One of the things that's also incredibly important, and I'm a licensed broker, is location, location, location. Nothing in the franchise world, in my opinion, is more important than choosing the best location. It has to be the best, or just don't do it. Do not settle for anything less than the best location. You will regret it every day from the moment you open that business. A couple fast facts for you about the real estate industry. There are 9 Canadian landlords in Canada that control 43% of Main Street retail today. There are another 60 landlords that control 40%. And about 1,000 landlords have the remaining 17%. Now, it's my job and my team's job to be best friends with these people all day, every day, so that we get access to the best opportunities. And the best opportunities aren't usually available to the market. You will not see a for lease sign on a phenomenal opportunity because it will be gone before it gets to the point of a for lease sign. You need to have those deep relationships with the landlords and make sure that you're not 50 feet from greatness. Around the corner from a great intersection is not the same as being on a great intersection. You got to make sure locations check all the boxes. Do a trade area map, key site details, direct competitors, retail activity, points of interest, daytime population at work, population growth, median household income. Median household income, your core demographics like Gen Z, millennials, young families, blue-collar workers, white-collar workers, traffic counts, demographic reports, and so much more. Make sure that you negotiate your lease aggressively and look out for your franchisee's best interests. Make sure you understand what your GROC is. GROC stands for gross occupancy cost. In the restaurant industry, for example, if you're in full casual dining, casual restaurants, like 3,000 to 5,000 square foot boxes, you want to stay somewhere just under 10%. If you're in fast food, you want to be between 10 to 12%. What that means is that if my rent is $60,000 a year, my sales need to be $600,000 a year to break even. Does that make sense? I know I went through that quickly. We can talk about that more after. Make sure that you understand how your build-out costs work. And to Victor's point about who's going to build the business, it's my strongest recommendation that for a franchisee's first store, they do not build their own business. And the reason is, when a franchisee is building their own business, they get distracted. The electrician doesn't show up one day, so they miss training to go and cover for the electrician. As a result, they might have missed learning how to make your most important product. And for the next 10 years, they are stuck making it wrong. Build out that first store. It's so important. And make sure you have exceptional training programs that get them set up for success. You can't train long enough. McDonald's has a 1-year unpaid training program that you have to give a $1 million cash deposit to attend. They are the greatest franchise in the world for a reason. They overtrain all the time. And even after all of this, that's actually when the real work begins. That's when you start actually working with your franchisees for the next 10 years to keep them successful. I always like to end on a quote. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, today's a gift, and that's why we call it the present. You all came here looking for that active, daring do, that dare to be great situation. Go do something with it. My name's Shawn Saraga, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and this is my email, and I'll be in the Tahini's booth all day as that's one of the clients that I'm with right now. Thank you. And now, Victor, why don't you come up and we can do some Q&A. So let's open it up to questions. Go ahead, sir.
Two questions. One was for Victor. Victor, you mentioned the FDD.
Yep.
When is probably a good time to do a possible franchise? This cannot distribute an FDD to everybody.
So to restate the question is, for me, and actually, I'm going to have Shawn partly answer this question as well. When do you send an FDD? When do you issue an FDD to a prospect, a prospective franchisee? Again, we've papered the FDD. It's ready to go. What do we do with it, right? It's our strong preference, and frankly, there's no reason you shouldn't do it this way. My office sends out all FDDs. Why? Because we don't want them to be botched. We want to make sure that every single time it goes out right. We talked about why that's important. Now, generally speaking, and Shawn will touch on this as well, it's part of your sales process or your granting process. We work with brokers like Shawn. We work with, brokers and consultants and whatever you want to call them, right? And yeah, we issue these FDDs. Very typically, the brand, when they're interviewing a prospect, like they will be here, right, they'll do a preliminary vet, make sure that they have enough capital that they sort of jive with them. They'll have a discovery call or something to get a sense of, okay, who is this franchisee? Who is this prospect? Do they fit into my brand? At that point, we would get an email from you. You say, hey, Bob wants to be a franchisee. We like Bob. Can we send him a disclosure document? And at that point, we issue the disclosure document. 12 hours later, it's out. It's out compliant. You have to wait at least 14 days after that prospect has acknowledged receiving that disclosure document before you can take any money from them, before you can sign a franchise agreement. If you don't do that, rescission remedy, okay? Now, maybe you can touch on why you choose a prospect, why you don't, et cetera, et cetera.
So some franchisors look at the disclosure document as a bad thing. And if you do, that's the wrong way to look at it. Your disclosure document is actually a marketing tool. And if you use it well, it's what helps you close the deal. I am highly structured, very process-driven. My process is airtight. We don't deviate from it. Franchisee makes an inquiry. We talk to them. Then we get their questionnaire in. Then we have a first Zoom meeting. We go through the numbers. Then we get them to sign an NDA. Then we go through more numbers. Then we get them to fill out a personality assessment. Then we do an asset verification. We do their credit. We make sure they can afford it. And it isn't until after that step that we actually send them the FDD. We typically send generic FDDs. Now, there's an argument to be made for generic and site-specific FDDs. But we send a generic FDD, and the reason we send a generic FDD is once they sign their FDD, they can sign a lease on any location that we send to them, and they can sign a franchise agreement right away. Now, when great locations come up, they go like that. They go very quickly. I need to be able to make decisions within 24 to 48 hours on some locations. I have my structure set up that when a new site comes up, I send it out to my distribution list of franchisees that have been disclosed or have already signed generic franchise agreements that are waiting for sites. And I've given them intersections to scout out, and this would be one of them. And then within 48 hours of me sending out an email, I'll get 5 or 6 people saying, I want it. And that puts me in the driver's seat with the franchisee, with the landlord, and with myself and being able to manage my business and my cash flow. That's the way that I recommend doing it. I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
The short answer is, and this is a lawyer answer, and I hate that I give this answer sometimes, but it depends. It depends on your sales cycle. It depends on who's selling for you. It depends on, when is that key window during your sales cycle, or your granting cycle, as Shawn might call it, that you feel that it's important from a marketing standpoint or from a sales standpoint to send the FDD out. You know what the law is. You can't do anything for 14 days. You can't take any money from them. You can't sign anything. But when it actually goes out is largely dependent on the brand. Okay?
Next question.
Yeah.
Can
Can an offline event, like an in-person, like a festival be franchised? Yes, of course. Yeah. Sorry, the question is, can an event like a festival be franchised? Absolutely. Any business can be franchised. If you're having a salsa festival in Vancouver and you want to offer the same program to be replicated in Calgary and Toronto and New York and Chicago, have at it. Victor will be happy to draft the agreements, and I'll be happy to work with you to find the right people to partner with you on it. Yes.
Talked about helping franchisees get to completion of construction and considerations for that. What about taking it a step further and helping get the operating business to a certain point when it's breaking or even or profitability before handing it off to make sure that they're successful? Anything about that?
Great question. So the question is, what about instead of helping a franchisee open their business, what if you opened it, if I'm understanding you right, got it to the point where it was cash flow positive and then sold it?
Handing it off. Maybe
Or
resell, just like you're doing with construction.
hand it off like a pre-sale, like under the Bulk Sales Act, something similar to that effect. So I will tell you that it's an interesting question on your timing also, because the banks have really tightened up on things, especially with regards to funding, and financial qualifications for franchisees have shifted a little bit, where the banks are no longer considering HST as part of working capital for cash flow. And for me, it's added an extra 50 grand to 60 grand in our build out costs, because the franchisee has to have that cash unencumbered. So we've started considering, do we build out these stores and then sell them turnkey? Do you want to sell them after they break even? So the reason I strongly recommend against that is because you're taking on all the risk, right? If the store doesn't break even, franchisee can back out and say, I changed my mind. I'm not buying the business anymore, and I'm not going to be proceeding. Even if you have a pre-sale agreement, they'll find a way out, and they always do. So the most conservative approach to protect your company and your money is to follow the traditional route. Sorry, do you want to add anything before we does this follow up?
I'm going to add something very quickly. Very typically, and frankly, this is only speaking as a lawyer given the deals that we do and the files that come across my desk. Very typically, a brand may have, 3, 4, 5, 6 corporate locations. And they say, hey, we want to offload one of these locations to a franchisee, right? Because as a franchisor, you're trying to get out of the business of being a restaurateur or an operator, right? And you want to get into the business of becoming a franchisor. There's a different mentality. Shawn's spoken about it, right? You're no longer, you don't want to be dropping chicken wings in the deep fryer anymore, for lack of a better example, right? So, very often we have clients that come to us and say, hey, I've got a corporate location. It's profitable, it's not profitable, whatever it might be, and we want to sell it. We want to sell it to a franchisee. Well, that's going to impact the disclosure process. Why? Because again, if you remember, the FDD has to include all material information about the deal. So you can't just send your standard generic FDD anymore, because you know that prospect is going to buy an existing location with historical sales and a lease, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a sales price. You might be selling it for $500,000, whatever it is. Well, all that information is going to have to go into the FDD, right? So this is something you also have to turn your mind to, say, okay, I'm going to have to give the franchisee everything they need to know, and the sales may not be that great, or they may be great. You're going to have to give them the sales history, right? You're going to have to disclose it to them. That's where we come in. We help you navigate that process.
I'll also say that it's going to be incredibly difficult to achieve really meaningful growth following that type of a model, because you're going to have severe cash flow restrictions based on your business. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, there's a follow-up? Yeah.
The take the construction for them, we're seeing that's still them taking on the financial risk. And I imagine if a franchisee is not performing, perhaps not paying the royalties, the franchisor might have the right to step in for operation risks.
Yes.
Is there a third time to where they take on the financial risk, but you're just simply providing a management, it's not they step in?
It's a great question. So the question is, can you actually provide management to the businesses? Can they invest and you run the businesses, and as a result, they're just taking their dividend or however you're going to pay them out their return on investment, and you're managing the business on their behalf? Am I hearing that right?
Up until construction, until break even.
Until break even.
Take the management of the construction one step further.
So I got to say, just my opinion, you're going to bury yourself in the weeds. You're going to really impede your cash flow. You're going to be dealing with people that are questioning your ability to run a business all the time. They're going to question the financials to no end. It is 10 times easier to sell a business before it opens than it is after it opens, no matter what you have in a contract. They'll always find a way out. And because this is such a litigious industry, and the courts favor the franchisee so heavily, you're really putting yourself at some severe risk here. Just my opinion.
One very quick thought. Franchising. Why do you franchise? You franchise because you don't want to operate a restaurant anymore, or you don't want to be in the weeds doing that that work every day. And B, you want to grow. You're not going to be able to grow if you stay actively involved in every single business, right? People come to me and they say, hey, I'm thinking maybe I'll do an operating partner model where I take 50% of the restaurant business, and the franchisee or the operator is basically just a glorified manager who runs the store every day, but I get the profits. Well, you're still going to be involved in that business, right? That's not franchising, right? You want to grow, franchise, right? That's it.
Yeah, silent partners are only silent if you're profitable. What's your question? Can you franchise a company that's seasonal? 100% yes. And some of the biggest companies in the world have been franchised that are seasonal, such as, lawn maintenance companies. Mr. Green, the Dwyer Group has, I think, 18 different brands that they franchise, and I think over 50% of them are seasonal. Yes, 100% you can franchise seasonal businesses. Just to be clear, as long as it can be incorporated and generate cash flow and shows a profit and can pay a royalty, it can be franchised. Am I right? Okay. Yes.
Show brought to you by Fat Bastards and Mary Brown's. We will be opening the doors in 10 minutes time. You have 10 minutes before we start the show. Hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Sorry, you're going to have to repeat the question. I apologize.
Are there specific considerations for a service-based franchise to help between franchisees and prevent them from taking their existing relationships and breaking out on their own?
It's a great question. So the question is, are there specific restrictions in place for service-based franchises that stop people from, let's say, stealing clients and intellectual property and breaking out on their own? Molly Maid is probably the best example of this, where they put in severe restrictive covenants and non-competes in place. They put a lot of rules in place. They control the data. Yes, 100%. And Victor is the man to protect you in those scenarios. I do want to say, though, people do what people do. And at some point, you may have to drop a hammer on someone and sue them, and it's not a bad thing, right? I encourage my clients, and not my clients anymore, they're my partners. I encourage my partners to drop a hammer at least once a year, right? Just to send a message, don't cross that line, right? Don't cross that line. This is serious. This is a business, and we're not joking around.
The simple answer, like Shawn said, to that specific example is a non-compete. Virtually every franchise agreement has it. It's typically tied to a territory. You can't say, hey, you can't run a Molly Maid in all of Canada. Chances are the court's not going to enforce that, right? But you very typically you'll say, hey, you can't run a Molly Maid within 5 or 10 kilometers of where there's an existing Molly Maid franchise, right? As an example. What we always tell clients when they come to us, when a client comes to me and says, hey, I've got a problem with a franchisee. They're not doing this, they're not, maybe they're behind on their royalties, whatever it might be. The first piece of advice is, the first question is, have you done everything operationally to try to get the franchisee to comply with your system? And what I mean by that is, have you done everything you can before I need to send a demand letter from my desk? Because when a franchisee gets a letter from me, it goes one of two ways. Either they comply, right, and they submit to the demand, or they don't, and they dig their heels in. It's a significant escalation to go and start threatening action under your franchise agreement to enforce your rights, and albeit it's very necessary in many instances. But I would wager 8 or 9 times out of 10, you can do something operationally about it. And you know what? Tell me, you've done everything operationally, you've done everything to try to get the franchisee on board, then come to me, we'll deal with the demand, we'll go after them. So that's the short answer, long answer, whatever. It's 5 minutes. Yeah.
Is it the same situation to prevent a franchisee from leaving their franchise and clients with them?
Well, so taking the clients with them presumably would be because they would want to compete, right? And the non-compete 30 seconds on non-competes. The non-compete certainly applies while they're a franchisee, but it also applies generally in the industry standard for 2 years post-termination. So non-solicits,
Because they're business owners, non-competes can apply.
yeah,
It doesn't apply to their employees.
correct. If they're employees, and at least in Ontario this is the case as an example, an employee can't be bound to a non-compete, but certainly a franchisee cannot compete for generally 2 years post-termination. Okay.
I will say this, bad actors are going to be bad actors, right? They might have an employee that they say, you take the list and compete and I'm going to fund you through a silent partner agreement. If someone wants to do something bad, they find a way to do it. Any other questions before we wrap up? Yeah.
For businesses to stay relevant over time, they do have to continue to innovate and whatnot. Are there any instances or concerns with franchising where the franchisees may actually inhibit changes and innovation in the systems itself?
It's a great question. I'm dealing with that issue right now. So I'm a partner in Tahini's Restaurants. We're a 42-store chain, and we've got 60 more stores opening over the next 80 weeks. We just want to introduce Saj bread into the chain. It involves a new piece of technology. It widens the venting. It's a little theatrical, and it makes a huge impact in our revenue. We see huge projections with this. It's something that one of our competitors is doing, and we find it a very attractive thing to do. We've introduced it now, and we have a franchisee that's getting ready to open a store, and we said this is the new model going forward. We've also introduced a redesign, and it drove up costs, not a significant amount, but enough that they squawked about it and gave us a hard time and said, we don't want it. We believe that we can run on the old system. We don't need the new system, because the scariest word in the English language to most people is change. Right? You're introducing change to something that they're already comfortable with. Now, if you don't change, you die. You all know that as business owners. Change is the only constant. But as franchisees, they don't always understand that. They think they're buying into something that's going to last for the next 10 years as is. But you put conditions in your franchise agreement that Victor will structure for you that say every 5 years you have to do a renovation. If the chain comes up with menu innovation and you need to add a new piece of equipment, that is going to be at your expense. So you have the right to enforce it. Having the right to do something and getting people to actually do it are two different discussions also, right? It's one thing to say I have the right to do this. It's another thing to actually get someone to actually do it. So I strongly recommend that when you do something like that, and this is what we did, we did an internal campaign where we started talking about it. We started doing education. We wanted to get buy-in. We weren't just going to shove it down their throats, right? We started doing buy-in. We started presenting what the new look was going to be. We had franchisees join us for meetings. We got their input into the machine so that when it was time to roll it out, it was a well-received change that everybody was excited for. Instead of just, we're operating in our vacuum. We have this great idea. You pay 50 grand to make it happen. Enjoy. That's not the right way to approach it. We'd rather have buy-in. We'd rather have participation. We'd rather have engagement. But Victor will make sure that you're fully within your rights to make it happen.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, and frankly, we're just out of time. I referred to the concept of system earlier. That is a term that is defined throughout our franchise agreement, and that's exactly what it addresses. It is certainly the system that you have, the recipes that you have, the menu offerings, et cetera, that you have on day one when they sign the franchise agreement is not going to be the same as on, in year 6. McDonald's puts out a new burger or a new menu item every other week, right? How do you make sure the franchisee complies? Well, they have to comply with the system. So the enforcement is there. Again, as I was answering your question earlier, operationally, how do you get them to do that? Separate question. That's Shawn's domain. All right? Okay.
So just to wrap up, you're going to be here in case people want to ask questions. I'm here with my partners, Tahini's. We're in row 2. You can find me there at any point in time. Email me. My company does coaching services for franchisor systems under 40 units. We currently have 7 slots remaining for coaching services. So if you're interested in discussing that, let me know. If you have a system that's probably over 30 or 40 units and you're looking to achieve hyper growth, give me a call about that as well.